My name is Olivia Caldwell, and on the night my hotel chain was featured in Forbes's America's Most Innovative Hospitality Ventures, I watched as security escorted my older sister Vanessa from the grand ballroom of our flagship property in downtown Truro, Chicago. Just minutes earlier, she had stood before 200 guests at her own 40th birthday celebration, a party I had hosted at my own expense, and called me the family charity case who finally found a way to avoid homelessness by playing hotelier with daddy's money. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. What the guests didn't know, what Vanessa herself didn't realize as she was escorted through those ornate double doors, was that I had built Caldwell Collective Hotels from the ground up after our father had cut me off completely 8 years ago. The woman who had spent decades convincing our family I would never amount to anything was celebrating her birthday in a hotel I owned, drinking champagne I had selected, surrounded by luxury I had created, all while believing I was nothing more than our father's failed project. The journey from being labeled the hopeless dreamer of the Caldwell family to becoming the owner of a successful hotel chain is a complicated one. But sometimes, the moment when your biggest doubter finally learns the truth about who you really are happens in the most unexpected way. Growing up in Westbrook, Massachusetts, a town where old money whispered louder than new achievements, I had always been the family disappointment. The Caldwell name carried weight in New England business circles. My father, Thomas Caldwell, had built Caldwell Financial Advisors into a respectable firm that managed investments for the region's elite families. My mother, Catherine, reinforced this success with her own credentials as a corporate attorney, creating a household where achievement wasn't just encouraged, it was the baseline expectation. From our earliest years, Vanessa embodied everything my parents valued: practical intelligence, social grace, and a natural aptitude for numbers. 4 years my senior, she graduated top of her class at Phillips, Exeter Academy, before earning her economics degree from Princeton and MBA from Wharton. Every achievement was celebrated with dinner parties, where my father would toast the future of the Caldwell legacy, while I sat quietly, already knowing my interests in art, design, and hospitality would never earn similar recognition. The business world requires precision and discipline, Olivia, my father would explain after I showed him my sketches for hotel spaces I'd imagined. Your sister understands this. These creative pursuits are lovely hobbies, but they're not serious. Career paths. By 16, I had learned to keep my dreams to myself. I'd sneak architecture and hotel design books into my room, studying floor plans and creating detailed notebooks filled with concepts for spaces that felt both luxurious and genuinely welcoming. I knew intuitively that high-end hospitality was about creating experiences, not just providing a place to sleep, but my insights were dismissed as cute at family gatherings, where Vanessa's opinions on market trends were treated as gospel. Our childhood home on Westbrook's historic hill was itself a testament to the Caldwell approach to life. Impressive, but coldly practical. The formal living room with its antique furniture was perfect for entertaining clients, but remained unused most days. My mother's home office was larger than the family room. My parents had constructed their lives around appearance and achievement, rather than comfort or connection. Despite growing up in the same environment, Vanessa and I developed fundamentally different responses to it. She thrived under the pressure, embracing the family values of practical success and social standing. I withdrew, creating my own world where spaces could be both beautiful and functional, where success might be measured in experiences rather than account balances. The problem with Olivia, I once overheard Vanessa telling my mother when I was 17, is that she doesn't understand reality. Someone needs to prepare her for the real world before she ends up working retail forever. This comment, delivered with the perfect blend of concern and condescension that was Vanessa's specialty, captured the dynamic that defined our relationship well into adulthood. Her success wasn't enough. My failure seemed necessary to complete the narrative she had constructed. When college application season arrived, Vanessa personally intervened. "Hospitality management isn't a real degree," she informed me, confiscating the brochure for Cornell's School of Hotel Administration I'd been reviewing. "If you're interested in business, apply to Wharton like I did. Dad's connections could help you get in, despite your creative tendencies." The clear implication that I wasn't smart enough to earn admission on merit stung more than her dismissal of my passion. But the Caldwell family didn't discuss feelings. We discussed practical next steps. So I found myself at Boston University studying business administration, my dreams of hotel design relegated to elective courses that my family never bothered to ask about. College provided some distance from family expectations, but holiday dinners quickly erased any sense of independence I'd developed. Each Thanksgiving and Christmas became a showcase for Vanessa's accomplishments. Her promotion at Goldman Sachs, her engagement to Bradley Thompson, whose family owned significant commercial real estate throughout New England, her perfect brownstone in Boston's Beacon Hill. My post-graduation job at a boutique hotel in Boston was met with tight smiles and gentle suggestions that something in finance might provide more stability. When I was promoted to guest experience manager at 24, my father responded by sending me listings for entry-level positions at his firm. "It's never too late to start building a real career," the email noted. By my late 20s, I had moved to Chicago, partly to pursue opportunities in the growing boutique hotel scene there, but mostly to escape the suffocating weight of being the Caldwell who couldn't quite measure up. I found a position with an up-and-coming hotel group that was redefining urban hospitality, throwing myself into learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. For 2 years, I worked 16-hour days, moving from front desk operations to event planning to revenue management. I volunteered for every difficult project, solved problems no one else wanted to touch, and slowly built a reputation as someone who understood both the art and business of hospitality. When guests requested me by name or left reviews mentioning specific experiences I'd designed, I saved them in a folder labeled "Real Success," a private rebellion against my family's narrow definition of achievement. During this period, Vanessa's check-ins became less frequent but more pointed. Each call inevitably included questions about my job situation, never career, and whether I was still at that hotel, as though my position was temporary. She had been made partner at her investment firm, was pregnant with her second child, and had just purchased a vacation home in Newport. Facts she worked into conversations with practiced casualness. "You know," she told me during one particularly difficult call after I'd shared news about a successful event I'd organized, "it's not too late to get an MBA. I could introduce you to some people who might overlook your unconventional background." The offer, framed as generosity, carried the same message I'd heard throughout my life. You're not good enough as you are. Your passions aren't valid. Success only looks one way. The turning point came shortly after my 30th birthday. I had developed a comprehensive proposal for a new type of boutique hotel concept, one that combined luxury accommodations with authentic local experiences and flexible spaces that transformed throughout the day. After months of refining the business plan, I decided to share it with my father, hoping that my thorough financial projections might finally earn his respect. I flew to Boston for the weekend, proposal in hand, rehearsing my presentation throughout. The flight. My parents hosted a small dinner that Friday night, just family plus Vanessa and Bradley, who arrived 20 minutes late with a bottle of wine that cost more than my monthly rent. "Sorry we're late," Vanessa announced, kissing the air near our mother's cheek. "Bradley just closed the Westerman acquisition, 12 commercial properties in one deal." My father beamed, launching into questions about cap rates and tenant improvements while my carefully prepared introduction sat unused in my mind. Throughout dinner, I waited for an opening, some moment when the conversation might naturally turn to my news. It never came. Finally, as dessert was served, I interrupted a discussion about Bradley's latest yacht purchase. "I've actually been working on something I'd like to share," I said, reaching for my portfolio. "I've developed a business plan for a new hotel concept, and I'd appreciate your thoughts, Dad." The table fell momentarily silent before my father cleared his throat. "That's nice, Olivia. Why don't we look at it after dinner?" "Actually," Vanessa interjected, setting down her wine glass with deliberate precision, "before we move on, we have some news of our own." She placed her hand over Bradley's diamond tennis bracelet, catching the light. "We've decided to establish the Thompson Caldwell Foundation. We're committing $10 million initially to support financial literacy programs for underprivileged youth." The quiz announcement was met with exactly the reaction my hotel concept would never receive. Genuine excitement, detailed questions, immediate validation. As my mother began discussing potential board members and my father praised the tax advantages of the structure they'd chosen, I quietly slid my portfolio back into my bag. Later that evening, after Bradley and Vanessa had departed, I found my father in his study. "About my hotel concept," I began, opening the portfolio on his desk. He glanced at the cover page before looking up. "Olivia, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this isn't realistic. The hospitality industry is extraordinarily competitive, and frankly, I'm concerned about you investing more time in what's essentially a service industry position." "Dad, I've run the numbers. The concept is viable, especially with the right investment backing. I've identified 3 potential locations in Chicago where—" "Enough." He closed the portfolio and handed it back to me. "If you're serious about building a career, I've told you repeatedly that there's a place for you at Caldwell Financial. Your sister started at the bottom too, you know. No special treatment." I took a deep breath. "I don't want to work in finance. I'm good at what I do. I understand hospitality, guest experience, property management, glorified customer service." He interrupted. "You're Caldwell. You should be building wealth, not serving people who are." The dismissal was so complete, so fundamentally rejecting everything I valued, that something shifted within me. I realized at that moment that I would never earn his approval on his terms. More importantly, I realized I no longer wanted to. "I'd like your investment in my concept," I said quietly. "Not as your daughter, but as a business person with a solid plan and industry experience. If you're unwilling to consider it on those terms, I'll seek funding elsewhere." My father leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I'd seen directed at people who disappointed him in business. "Let me be clear. I will not invest Caldwell money in a hotel venture, nor will I connect you with anyone who might. If you insist on pursuing this instead of a respectable career, you'll do so without my support, financial or otherwise." I nodded, something unexpectedly liberating in the finality of his position. "I understand. What happened next would change the trajectory of our family dynamics forever." As I turned to leave his study, my portfolio tucked under my arm, my father added, "And Olivia, until you come to your senses about your career, I think it's best if we reduce your access to family resources. The monthly stipend will stop, effective immediately. Perhaps some financial reality will provide motivation that your mother and I apparently couldn't." The stipend, $3,000 monthly, that had supplemented my hotel salary and allowed me to afford my apartment in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood, had never been presented as conditional. I had assumed it was a modest distribution from the family. Trust, similar to what Vanessa received, though hers was considerably larger. "You're cutting me off because I won't work for your company?" I asked, disbelief momentarily overwhelming other emotions. "I'm encouraging you to make responsible choices," he corrected, turning his attention to papers on his desk. "The door to Caldwell Financial remains open when you're ready to be serious about your future." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I left Boston the next morning without saying goodbye, something fundamental having broken in my understanding of family and support. On the flight back to Chicago, I made calculations on a napkin. My savings would cover 3 months of expenses if I was careful. I had two choices: abandon my hotel concept and find a position that paid enough to maintain my lifestyle, or completely reimagine my life around building my dream. By the time the plane landed, I had made my decision. I gave notice on my expensive apartment that afternoon and moved to a tiny studio in an up-and-coming neighborhood. I picked up consulting work advising small hotels on guest experience strategies while continuing my full-time position. Every spare dollar went into an account, labeled Caldwell Collective Seed Fund. What I didn't know then, as I packed up designer clothes to sell online and canceled the premium services that had connected me to my privileged upbringing, was that Vanessa had been on the phone with our parents before my flight even departed. Olivia's having another one of her episodes, she reported. Making demands, threatening to embarrass the family with some hotel scheme. I think you're absolutely right to take a firm hand, Daddy. She's always responded to structure. This conversation, which my mother would reveal to me years later, perfectly captured how thoroughly Vanessa had positioned herself as the responsible daughter, forced to manage her unstable sister's periodic rebellions. The narrative she had constructed, that my interest in hospitality was a phase, a rebellion, a failure to launch, had become family doctrine, repeated so often that even I had sometimes wondered if they were right. For the next 3 years, I lived a life that would have horrified my family had they bothered to stay connected. My tiny apartment had a mattress on the floor and milk crates serving as bookshelves. I worked my hotel job during the day, consulted evenings and weekends, and used every spare moment to refine my business plan and connect with potential investors. I attended industry conferences on credit cards, wore the same black dress to networking events, and learned to do my own accounting to save on professional fees. Holiday invitations from my parents came and went. I declined, citing work obligations rather than admitting I couldn't afford the flights. Vanessa's occasional texts oscillated between performative concern, just checking you're alive since you've gone silent again, and subtle digs, family. Christmas was lovely. Bradley gifted everyone shares in his new development. Shame you missed it. What none of them knew, what I had stopped trying to tell them, was that my hotel scheme was gaining traction. A chance meeting with Elise Richardson, a tech entrepreneur looking to diversify her investments, had led to my first significant funding conversation. She had stayed at my hotel during a conference and been impressed by the guest experience improvements I'd implemented. "You understand something fundamental that most hoteliers miss," she told me over coffee. "People don't pay for rooms. They pay for how spaces make them feel." That simple validation, recognition of the principle that had guided my work for years, led to 6 months of discussions, refined projections, and eventually, a deal structure. Elise would provide initial capital for a controlling stake, with provisions allowing me to earn back equity through performance. We would start with one property, a struggling boutique hotel in Chicago's West Loop that had excellent bones but poor management. I gave notice at my job the day after signing our partnership agreement. My boss, who had watched me balance multiple roles for years, wasn't surprised. "The industry is losing talent but gaining a visionary," he said during my exit interview. "I expect great things from Caldwell Collective." The name had been deliberate, a reclamation of my identity separate from my family's definition of it. Collective acknowledged the collaborative approach I wanted for my company, bringing together designers, chefs, local artisans, and hospitality professionals to create experiences rather than just accommodations. The first year nearly broke me. Renovating the property while keeping it operational stretched our initial budget to its limits. I moved into an unused staff room to eliminate my rent expense entirely, showering in the hotel gym and eating staff meals. 18-hour days became normal. I learned plumbing basics from YouTube videos, negotiated with suppliers from the bathtub, of a guest room during turnover, and personally handled customer complaints when we couldn't afford to hire a dedicated manager. Throughout this period, communication with my family dwindled to obligatory birthday texts and brief Christmas calls. Vanessa had been made managing director at her firm, the youngest in its history, and had just completed construction on their second home in Aspen. My parents had semi-retired to Florida, but maintained their Boston residence for the summers. The geographic and emotional distance between us had never been greater. When our hotel, rebranded as Caldwell Collective West Loop, finally opened properly after renovations, the response exceeded even our optimistic projections. The property's unique approach to common spaces that transformed throughout the day, morning coffee bar to afternoon co-working to evening cocktail lounge, caught the attention of industry publications. Our partnerships with local artists, whose work was not just displayed but available for purchase with proceeds split between the artist and local arts education, created a buzz among travelers tired of generic luxury. By the end of the second year, we had not only become profitable, but had secured funding for a second location, a former warehouse in Chicago's River North that we transformed into a larger property with expanded concepts. Elise's continued investment, along with 2 new partners who believed in our vision, allowed us to grow without the bank financing that my family had always assumed would be necessary, and unavailable to me, for any serious business venture. Upgraded from the staff room to a proper apartment, though one still modest by Caldwell standards, every available dollar went back into the business. When industry awards and recognition began coming our way, I saved the announcements in the same folder where I'd once stored guest compliments, private validations that required no family acknowledgement. In the spring before I turned 36, Vanessa reached out with an unexpected request. Her 40th birthday was approaching, and Bradley wanted to host a celebration in Chicago, where many of their clients and colleagues were based. "We need a suitable venue," she explained in a voice message. Bradley suggested the Peninsula, "But I thought of you since you're still doing that hotel thing. Do you have contacts who might help us secure a good rate?" "Nothing too budget, obviously. We're expecting around 200 guests. Let me know if you're still in hospitality. It's been so long since we've properly caught up." The message crystallized. Everything about our relationship, her assumption that I was still in a mid-level position who might know people, the casual diminishment of my career as that hotel thing, the implication that I wouldn't understand the needs of a luxury event. After 6 years of building Caldwell Collective into a company now valued at over $30 million, I was still the sister who needed to be explained what nothing to budget meant. I listened to the message 3 times before making a decision that would set in motion the most public family reckoning imaginable. I texted her back, "I can help with a venue. Call me tomorrow to discuss details." The phone call with Vanessa the next day went exactly as I'd anticipated. Her voice carried that particular blend of condescension and forced warmth she reserved for people she considered beneath her social standing, a tone I'd become intimately familiar with over decades of being her sister. "Olivia, thanks for getting back to me so quickly," she began. "As I mentioned, we need somewhere impressive. Bradley's invited several managing partners from his firm, and at least 2 clients who own NFL teams. Nothing experimental or boutique, as I believe they're called. Somewhere established with proper service." I balanced my phone between ear and shoulder while reviewing quarterly projections for our newest property, a historic building in Chicago's Gold Coast that we had spent 18 months renovating into our flagship hotel. The Caldwell Collective. Gold Coast had opened just 3 months prior, but was already being hailed by travel publications as a new standard in urban luxury. "I understand completely," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "What dates are you considering?" "The first weekend in May. We need a ballroom that can accommodate 200 for a seated dinner, plus space for dancing and mingling." The Peninsula. quoted us $30,000 for the space plus catering minimums, which seems reasonable, but Bradley thought you might know of alternatives. The mention of the peninsula, a competitor whose traditional approach to luxury represented exactly what Caldwell Collective had positioned itself against, added another layer of irony to the situation. Our Gold Coast property had a spectacular grand ballroom that had once hosted Chicago's elite during the 1920s, which we had painstakingly restored while adding modern touches that made it one of the most sought-after event spaces in the city. Actually, I said carefully, I might have the perfect venue for you. We recently completed a historical restoration of a ballroom that would suit your needs exactly. It's elegant, centrally located, and I can personally ensure you receive exceptional service. That sounds promising, Vanessa replied, her tone shifting to cautious interest. What's the property called? I'll have my assistant look into it. Caldwell Collective Gold Coast. A pause. I'm not familiar with that. Is it new? Who owns it? The moment stretched between us. A perfect opportunity to correct 6 years of misunderstanding, to simply state, I own it. I founded Caldwell Collective. Hotels. I've built a successful hospitality company without any family support. Instead, I made a decision that would dramatically shape what happened next. It's a relatively recent addition to Chicago's luxury market, I said. Why don't I send you the information and have our events team contact you directly? As a professional courtesy, I'm sure they'll offer favorable terms. That would be helpful, Vanessa replied, apparently satisfied with my deliberate ambiguity. Have them contact Bradley's assistant. He's handling the details while I focus on the guest list. We're flying in on Thursday before the event to oversee preparations. After ending the call, I sat in my office overlooking Chicago's magnificent skyline, considering the path forward. I could simply have our events team handle Vanessa's birthday like any other client booking. I could communicate through staff, maintain my distance, and avoid the inevitable confrontation that would come when she discovered the truth. That would be the practical approach, the Caldwell approach. But something had shifted in me during those years of building my company from nothing. I had stopped measuring my choices against what my family would approve of and started evaluating them based on my own values. The woman who had slept on a mattress on the floor while working 18-hour days to bring her vision to life wasn't interested in hiding her success to spare her sister's ego. I called Jackson Myers, our events director. I need you to prepare a proposal for a May event, I explained. 200 guests, full premium service. The client is my sister. Jackson, who had been with me since our first property and knew pieces of my family history, raised an eyebrow. The sister who doesn't know you own the company? The same. And the plan is? Treat it like any premium booking, but I'll be personally overseeing certain elements. She'll be communicating with you directly until the event itself. And when she finds out you're not just a random hotel employee, but actually the owner? That this is your flagship property? I considered the question carefully. I think we'll let that revelation occur naturally during the event. Jackson grinned. This should be interesting. The next few weeks passed in a flurry of preparations. Jackson kept me updated on Vanessa's requests, each more demanding than the last. She had specific requirements for lighting, insisted on reviewing multiple table setting options, and requested that staff wear traditional formal attire rather than the more stylish uniforms we had designed for our brand. She's requested a meeting with the hotel manager when she arrives, Jackson informed me after one particularly lengthy call with Bradley's assistant. She wants to ensure standards will be maintained for her VIP guests. I smiled. Schedule it for Friday afternoon in the main office. I'll handle it personally. As the event approached, I found myself reflecting on the deeper roots of Vanessa's dismissive attitude toward me, something I hadn't allowed myself to fully examine while focused on survival and building my business. Our childhood had established a narrative that seemed impossible to break. Vanessa as the capable, practical achiever. me as the dreamy, impractical disappointment. But there was something beyond this simple dynamic that I had only recognized after years of distance from our family system. Vanessa's need to diminish me had always seemed disproportionate to any actual competition between us. We had different interests, different strengths, different goals. Yet she had consistently gone out of her way to position my choices as failures, my interests as childish, my perspective as naive. I remembered a moment from my sophomore year of college when I'd brought home an award from a hospitality design competition. It wasn't nationally significant, just a regional recognition, but it had validated my passion at a time when I badly needed that validation. I had placed the certificate on the refrigerator, a small act of visibility in a household where my achievements rarely registered. During dinner that evening, Vanessa had studied it briefly before asking, "Is this from that hotel decorating club you joined? How nice that they give everyone little certificates." When I explained it was a juried competition judged by industry professionals, she smiled tightly and changed the subject to her recent acceptance to Wharton's MBA program. Later that night, I found the certificate had been removed from the refrigerator and placed in a drawer. This pattern has repeated countless times throughout our lives. Any recognition I received was minimized, any struggle magnified. Even my jobs during college, deliberately chosen for their relevance to my hospitality interests, were characterized as Olivia's little service positions rather than strategic career development. What I couldn't understand then, but had come to recognize during the years building my company, was that Vanessa's behavior stemmed from something deeper than mere sibling rivalry. Her sense of identity seemed inexplicably threatened by my pursuit of a different path, as though my rejection of our family's narrow definition of success somehow undermined the choices she had made to conform to those expectations. The most revealing incident had occurred during my cousin Andrew's wedding 5 years ago, the last family event I had attended before the complete rupture with my father. During the reception, a family friend had asked about my work, and I had enthusiastically described my recent promotion to guest experience manager at the Chicago hotel. "That sounds fascinating," the friend had commented. "The hospitality industry is evolving so quickly with technology and changing travel preferences. You must be right at the cutting edge." Before I could respond, Vanessa had appeared at my elbow, champagne in hand. "Olivia has always enjoyed her customer service roles," she interjected smoothly. "We're all just happy she's found something that suits her abilities. Not everyone is cut out for the corporate world." What struck me most wasn't just the dismissal, but the flash of something like panic that had crossed Vanessa's face when someone showed genuine interest in my career. It was as though my potential success, even in a field she considered beneath her, represented some existential threat to her position within the family. This dynamic had established deep roots from our earliest childhood. Our parents, perhaps, unwittingly had reinforced it by consistently elevating Vanessa's achievements while treating mine as cute diversions. The family system required me to remain the underachiever against which Vanessa's success could be measured. What would happen when that carefully maintained narrative collapsed? When the sister who had been positioned as a perpetual disappointment was revealed to be a successful entrepreneur? The thought both troubled and energized me as Vanessa's birthday celebration approached. 2 days before the event, I received an email from my mother, the first direct communication in nearly a year. "Olivia, Vanessa mentioned you've been helpful with arrangements for her birthday celebration. It's good to hear you're still working in hospitality and maintaining professional connections. Your father and I have decided to attend, as Bradley has arranged for the company jet to bring us from Florida. Perhaps we can meet for coffee while we're in Chicago if your schedule allows." Mom, the message was classic Catherine Caldwell, simultaneously acknowledging and diminishing my contribution, making assumptions about my still working in hospitality as though it were a temporary phase. and suggesting that fitting family into my schedule might be challenging rather than a priority. I crafted a careful response. "Mom, I look forward to seeing you and Dad at Vanessa's celebration. Coffee would be lovely. The hotel where the event is being held has an excellent cafe. Perhaps Friday morning would work?" Olivia, I deliberately maintained the ambiguity about my connection to the hotel, curious to see how the revelation would unfold naturally rather than through explanation. The Thursday before the event arrived quickly. I had arranged to be conveniently absent when Vanessa and Bradley came for their initial walkthrough, having Jackson handle the tour while I observed remotely through our security system. A slight invasion of privacy justified by 6 years of family estrangement. Watching Vanessa move through the spaces I had designed was a surreal experience. She appeared genuinely impressed by the grand ballroom with its restored 1920s ceiling, the custom lighting installations I had commissioned from local artists, and the seamless blend of historical architecture with contemporary design that had become Caldwell Collective's signature aesthetic. "This exceeds expectations," she told Jackson, her gaze traveling over details I had personally obsessed over during the renovation. "The peninsula has always been our go-to, but this has a certain character that's quite appealing." "Who did you say founded this hotel group?" "Caldwell Collective was founded by Olivia Caldwell," Jackson replied simply. "She's quite hands-on with all our properties." Vanessa's expression flickered with momentary confusion. "Caldwell is a common enough name, I suppose. Is she here today? I'd like to compliment her on the design." "Ms. Caldwell will be meeting with you tomorrow afternoon as requested," Jackson responded smoothly. "She's looking forward to it." Watching this exchange on the security monitor, I felt a curious blend of anticipation and apprehension. Part of me wanted to walk into the ballroom at that moment, to witness the shock on Vanessa's face as the sister she had dismissed for decades was revealed as the visionary behind the space she was admiring. But another part, the strategist I had become while building my company, recognized that timing was everything. The revelation would have maximum impact in a context where Vanessa could neither dismiss nor diminish it. Friday morning brought my scheduled coffee with my parents. I selected my wardrobe carefully, a tailored charcoal suit that projected authority without flashiness, accessorized with the simple pearl earrings that had been my grandmother's. Professional, polished, but not trying too hard, the visual vocabulary of success. I arranged to meet them in the hotel's cafe, deliberately choosing a table in view of the impressive lobby with its statement art installation, a suspended sculpture of interconnected brass elements that caught and reflected light throughout the day, which had been featured in Architectural Digest the previous month. My parents arrived precisely on time, as they always did. My father Thomas looked older than I remembered, his once commanding presence somewhat diminished, though he still carried himself with the rigid posture of someone accustomed to authority. My mother, Catherine, appeared largely unchanged. Her perfectly maintained blonde bob and impeccable fashion choices creating the same polished exterior she had maintained throughout my childhood. They scanned the cafe, gazes passing over me before returning with recognition tinged with something like surprise. My mother recovered first, moving forward with practiced social grace. "Olivia, you look well," she offered, accepting my brief hug with the same restrained affection I remembered from childhood. My father nodded, his handshake formal as though greeting a business associate rather than a daughter he hadn't seen in years. "Thank you for suggesting this place," my mother continued as we sat. "It's quite lovely. Vanessa mentioned the hotel was relatively new. Have you been working here for a long time?" The question confirmed what I had suspected. They had maintained their own version of my life story, one where I remained in some mid-level hospitality position, perhaps having worked my way up to management but nothing more significant. "I have a strong connection to this property," I replied, deliberately ambiguous. "How was your flight from Florida?" The conversation proceeded along predictable lines. My parents discussed their semi-retirement, Vanessa's children's achievements, In private school, Bradley's latest business ventures. They asked polite but superficial questions about my life, clearly operating under assumptions that I chose not to correct. Not yet. Your sister has done exceptionally well, my father noted after describing Vanessa's recent feature in a financial publication. Managing director at her age is remarkable, though not surprising given her drive. The Thompson Caldwell Foundation is making a genuine impact as well. They've just established a scholarship program at Wharton. I nodded, sipping my coffee. Vanessa has always been focused on traditional metrics of success. Something in my tone caused my mother to look at me more closely. You seem different, Olivia. More settled somehow. I am, I acknowledged. The past few years have been transformative, professionally and personally. Well, we're glad to hear you've maintained your position in hospitality, my father offered with the air of someone acknowledging a minor achievement. Consistency is important in any career, even in service industries. The familiar dismissal washed over me without the sting it once carried. I had moved beyond seeking his approval or validation, a realization that felt like its own form of success. Actually, I said, glancing at my watch, I should be going. I have a meeting with Vanessa to discuss final arrangements for tomorrow's event. You're personally handling her event? My mother seemed surprised. That's very kind, given your history of differences. I'm ensuring everything meets our standards, I replied, leaving the hour deliberately unqualified. As we said our goodbyes in the lobby, my father paused, his gaze traveling over the impressive space with its soaring ceilings and meticulous design details. This is quite an establishment, he noted, clearly well-funded. I'm surprised I haven't heard of the investment group behind it. What did you say it was called? Caldwell Collective, I answered, watching his expression for any flicker of recognition. There was none. Coincidental name, he murmured before, turning toward the elevators that would take them to their suite. One of our premium accommodations that I had personally ensured was prepared to exacting standards. As they disappeared from view, I checked the time. In 30 minutes, I would meet with Vanessa in my capacity as hotel owner and founder, a meeting that would begin the dismantling of the narrative she had constructed about me over decades. The moment I had neither planned for nor avoided was finally arriving, shaped by circumstances that seemed almost deliberately orchestrated by fate. I straightened my jacket and headed toward my office, where Jackson was waiting with final details for tomorrow's event, and the sister who had never believed I would amount to anything was about to discover just how wrong she had been. My office at Caldwell Collective Gold Coast occupied the corner of the 4th floor, offering panoramic views of Chicago's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Unlike the sterile corporate environments my father preferred, I had designed this space to reflect the same philosophy that guided our hotels. Functional, luxury infused with personal touches that told a story. The reclaimed oak desk had been salvaged from a historic Chicago hotel demolished in the 1970s. The walls featured a rotating collection of works by local artists, currently showcasing urban landscapes by a Southside photographer I'd discovered at a community gallery. A glass case near the entrance displayed artifacts from our properties. The original brass room key from our first West Loop location, a fragment of hand-painted wallpaper uncovered during renovation of our River North property, the architectural rendering of this flagship hotel from its planning stages. Jackson arrived 15 minutes before Vanessa's scheduled appointment, tablet in hand. Everything is confirmed for tomorrow, he reported. The menu has been finalized, entertainment scheduled, and special requests accommodated, including the specific champagne Mr. Thompson insisted upon, which required some creative sourcing. Excellent, I nodded, reviewing the details on the screen he passed to me. And the additional arrangements we discussed? All set, Jackson confirmed with a slight smile. The photographer will capture reactions discreetly. The head of security has been briefed on potential scenarios, and we've arranged for the Forbes journalist to attend as you requested. Though she believes she's simply covering a high-profile social event at our property. Perfect. Let's proceed as planned. As Jackson departed, I moved to the window, gathering my thoughts while watching the afternoon light play across the Chicago architecture. The city had become my home in ways Boston never had. Each neighborhood with its distinct character, the resilient energy that permeated its streets, the blend of Midwestern practicality and cosmopolitan sophistication that matched my own sensibilities. Building. Caldwell Collective here hadn't been merely a business decision, but a deliberate choice to root myself in a place that valued reinvention and authenticity over inherited status. Chicago understood transformation. The city itself had risen from literal ashes to reinvent itself repeatedly throughout its history. A knock at the door interrupted my reflection. My assistant Maya appeared, her expression professional despite what I knew must be intense curiosity about the upcoming meeting. Ms. Caldwell, your 3 o'clock appointment has arrived. Mrs. Thompson is accompanied by her husband. Thank you, Maya. Please show them in. I positioned myself behind my desk, a deliberate choice that established the power dynamic for what would follow. When the door opened again, I was reviewing documents with practiced nonchalance, looking up only when Maya announced, Ms. Olivia Caldwell will see you now. Vanessa entered first, her posture exuding the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention in any room. She wore a tailored cream suit that probably cost more than my first month's rent in Chicago. Her blonde hair arranged in the sophisticated updo she had favored since her 20s. Bradley followed, tall, conventionally handsome in the way of men who had never worried about money, his smile revealing the perfect teeth of privileged American upbringing. The moment Vanessa's gaze settled on me was one I had imagined countless times over the past weeks. Her expression transformed from polite professional interest to utter disbelief, mouth actually opening slightly before she recovered her composure. Olivia? The single word carried layers of confusion. Vanessa, Bradley. I greeted them with deliberate calm, rising to extend my hand. Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. Bradley recovered more quickly than my sister, his face arranging itself into an uncertain smile as he moved forward to shake my hand. Olivia, this is unexpected. Are you working here now? Before I could respond, Vanessa found her voice. We're supposed to be meeting with the hotel manager to finalize arrangements for tomorrow. There must be some confusion. There's no confusion, I replied, gesturing again to the chairs across from my desk. I am the appropriate person to discuss your event arrangements. Vanessa remained standing, her eyes darting around the office, taking in the elements that clearly indicated permanence and authority. The awards displayed on a side shelf, the framed cover of Hospitality Design magazine featuring our river, North property, the nameplate on my desk that read Olivia Caldwell, founder and CEO. You work here, she stated, her tone suggesting she was processing this information cautiously. In management. Not exactly, I corrected her gently. I founded Caldwell Collective Hotels. This is our flagship property, opened 9 months ago. After extensive restoration of the historic Burnham building, we currently operate 4 properties in Chicago with a 5th under development in Detroit. The silence that followed was profound. Bradley sank into one of the chairs, his expression suggesting he was recalculating numerous assumptions. Vanessa remained standing, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the back of the chair as though for support. That's not possible, she finally managed. The investment capital alone would be millions. The connections required, the industry experience. 6 years ago, I secured initial funding from Elise Richardson, I explained, keeping my tone conversational rather than defensive. You might know her. She founded PixelPath before selling to Google. She recognized the viability of my business model when more traditional investors were skeptical. Our first property became profitable within 18 months, which attracted additional investment for expansion. Bradley leaned forward, his businessman's interest apparently overriding family dynamics. The Caldwell Collective portfolio must be worth. Our most recent valuation placed the company at approximately $47 million, I confirmed, though that was before the Gold Coast property demonstrated its current performance metrics. Vanessa finally sank into the chair, her expression shifting from disbelief to something more complex, confusion tinged with what might have been anger. Why didn't you tell us? All this time we thought you were still working for someone else, struggling to make ends meet in a service position. You assumed I was struggling, I corrected her. I never said that. In fact, we haven't had a meaningful conversation about my career in over 6 years. Since Dad made it clear that pursuing hospitality meant doing so without family support. Bradley shifted uncomfortably. Your father mentioned you had chosen an unconventional path, but he never indicated that I'd built a successful company? I finished for him. That's not surprising. Acknowledging my success would require rethinking the family narrative about what constitutes valuable work and acceptable ambition. Vanessa's shock was beginning to crystallize into the defensive posture I knew so well. So this is what? Some elaborate revenge scheme? You deliberately kept your success secret so you could arrange this dramatic revelation at my birthday celebration? Not at all, I replied calmly. When you contacted me about finding a venue, you assumed I was still in a mid-level position. Who might help you secure a discount? I simply allowed events to unfold naturally. This meeting was inevitable, given your request to speak with hotel management. But the name, Caldwell Collective, you must have known we'd make the connection. I smiled slightly. Dad didn't. He was just here this morning and commented on the coincidental name. This information seemed to genuinely startle her. Dad was here? He knows? Not yet. I thought it more appropriate to clarify things with you first, given that it's your event we're hosting. Bradley cleared his throat, apparently attempting to steer the conversation toward more practical ground. Well, this is certainly unexpected, but ultimately a positive development. Family supporting family, even through unconventional channels. His gaze traveled appreciatively around the office. The property is genuinely impressive, Olivia. You should be proud of what you've built. His comment, probably intended as conciliatory, highlighted everything that had been wrong with my family's approach to my career. The subtext was clear. Now that my work had resulted in measurable financial success, it was finally worthy of acknowledgement. Thank you, Bradley, I replied neutrally. Regarding tomorrow's event, all arrangements have been confirmed according to your specifications. Jackson Myers, our events director, has prepared a final overview for your approval. I slid a leather portfolio across the desk, deliberately shifting the conversation from my achievement to the matter at hand. Vanessa made no move to take it, her eyes still fixed on me with an intensity that suggested she was reprocessing years of interactions through this new lens. How could you afford this? She asked abruptly. After Dad cut you off, you had nothing. No connections, no capital, certainly not enough savings to live on while starting a business. The question revealed how completely she had misunderstood both my capabilities and my journey. I moved to a studio apartment in Humboldt Park that cost 1/3 of my previous rent. I sold designer clothes and accessories I'd accumulated during the years of family subsidy. I worked full-time while consulting on the side and developed a business plan strong enough to attract investment. You could have asked for help, she said, though whether she meant this as accusation or genuine observation wasn't clear. I did, I reminded her gently. I presented a comprehensive business plan to Dad and requested investment capital. He dismissed it as glorified customer service and made it clear that Caldwell's support was contingent on abandoning my chosen field. Bradley, perhaps sensing the conversation's growing tension, reached for the portfolio. The ballroom looked spectacular. during our walkthrough yesterday. The restoration work is remarkable. Those original ceiling details must have been challenging to preserve while updating the infrastructure. It required specialized artisans, I confirmed. We brought in restoration experts from Europe who had worked on historical properties there. The lighting system was designed to enhance the original architecture while providing modern functionality. Vanessa stood abruptly. I need some air. This is a lot to process. Of course, I nodded. Take whatever time you need. Maya can show you to the rooftop garden if you'd like a quiet space to collect your thoughts. After they departed, Vanessa, still visibly processing, Bradley trailing behind with the event portfolio and an expression caught between concern for his wife and evident interest in the business opportunity my company might represent, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The confrontation had unfolded differently than I'd anticipated. I had expected anger, perhaps accusations, certainly the defensive posture Vanessa typically adopted when challenged. Instead, I had glimpsed something more vulnerable beneath her shock, a fundamental recalibration of her understanding, not just of me, but of herself in relation to me. For nearly 3 decades, Vanessa had operated under the assumption that her path, following our parents' blueprint for success, was objectively superior to mine. Her sense of identity had been partially built on the contrast. The practical, successful sister versus the impractical dreamer who needed guidance and protection. My success challenged not just her perception of me, but her understanding of success itself. Jackson returned shortly after, curiosity evident in his expression. How did it go? About as expected, I replied. Shock, disbelief, some defensiveness. Bradley seemed almost impressed once he processed what we've built. And tomorrow? Do you think she'll cancel? I considered the question carefully. No. Canceling would require explaining to 200 guests why the venue had changed last minute. Vanessa prizes her social reputation too highly for that. She'll proceed as planned, though I suspect with some strategic adjustments to how she positions her relationship to the venue. Will you attend as planned? Jackson asked. Absolutely, I confirmed. But let's make one adjustment to the arrangements. Add my name to the official welcome program. Brief remarks as founder and CEO before dinner is served. Jackson grinned, making sure there's no ambiguity about your role. Clarity seems important at this juncture, I agreed, returning his smile. The remainder of the day passed in a flurry of preparations for both Vanessa's event and a major hospitality industry conference where I was scheduled to deliver a keynote address the following week. I had just finished reviewing my presentation when Maya announced another visitor, unexpected and unscheduled. My father entered without waiting for confirmation, his expression unreadable as he closed the door behind him. For a moment, we simply regarded each other across the expansive office. Thomas Caldwell had once seemed like a giant to me, an imposing figure whose approval I had sought with increasing desperation throughout my youth. Now, I saw him more clearly, a man of undeniable achievement but limited vision, physically smaller than my memory had maintained, and currently struggling to categorize the daughter who had defied his proclamations about her capabilities. Vanessa told us, he said finally, remaining standing despite my gesture toward the chair across from my desk. About all of this. His hand moved in a vague gesture that encompassed the office, the building, the enterprise I had built. I assumed she might, I replied, maintaining my seat in a subtle reversal of our usual power dynamic. It must have been unexpected news. Unexpected, he repeated, the word seemingly inadequate. You've built all this without saying a word to your family. Years of... He trailed off, apparently unable to find the right characterization. Success? I offered. Achievement? Growth? All those things you once suggested I would never experience in glorified customer service careers? His expression tightened at having his words repeated back to him. You deliberately kept this from us. Did I? I asked, genuine curiosity in my voice. Or did you simply never ask any questions that would have revealed it? Our conversations have been limited to holiday formalities for years, Dad. You never inquired about my professional development beyond confirming I was still in hospitality. You could have told us when things started to succeed, he insisted, though with less conviction than I would have expected. To what end? I asked simply. Would it have changed your perspective on the value of my chosen field? Would it have altered your belief that finance and law are the only paths worth pursuing? Or would you have simply attributed my success to luck or connections rather than vision and execution? My father moved to the window, gazing out at the Chicago skyline as though gathering his thoughts. When he turned back, his expression had shifted slightly. "Why Caldwell?" he asked, surprising me with the question. "After everything, why keep the family name for your company?" The question struck at something fundamental that I hadn't fully articulated even to myself. I considered it carefully before responding. "Because I wanted to redefine what Caldwell could mean," I said finally. "Not just wealth management and practical success, but innovation, hospitality, environments that enhance people's experiences." I wanted to expand the definition rather than reject it entirely. Something flickered across his face, recognition perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. He moved to one of the display cases, studying the artifacts from our properties. "Your mother is quite overwhelmed by all this," he said, changing direction. "She's wondering if she should have seen the potential earlier, if she missed signs of your aptitude." "My aptitude was always evident," I replied without heat. "My interests simply didn't align with what you and Mom valued. You saw my focus on hospitality and design as a diversion rather than a calling. That was a failure of imagination, not observation." He turned, meeting my gaze directly for what felt like the first time in years. "I underestimated you," he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. "We all did. What you've built here is significant." Coming from Thomas Caldwell, this qualified acknowledgement represented a seismic shift. I allowed myself to recognize the weight of the moment without being consumed by it, neither dismissing his nascent recognition nor overvaluing it. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means something, coming from you." He nodded, then asked the question that likely represented his primary purpose in coming. "What happens now? At Vanessa's event tomorrow?" "The celebration proceeds as planned," I assured him. "Caldwell Collective will provide the exceptional experience we're known for. The only change is that I'll be acknowledged as founder and CEO during the official welcome." "And your relationship with Vanessa? With the family?" he pressed, an unusual uncertainty in his voice. "That depends," I replied honestly, "on how everyone chooses to respond to reality, rather than the narrative they've maintained. I'm not interested in conflict or retribution, Dad. I simply want acknowledgement of who I actually am, rather than who you all decided I must be." He absorbed this, nodding slowly. "Your mother and I will attend tomorrow, of course. Perhaps afterwards, we might discuss potential opportunities for collaboration." The suggestion that now that my success was undeniable, it might be appropriately folded into family enterprises was so characteristic that I nearly smiled. Some things hadn't changed at all. "Let's focus on tomorrow's celebration first," I suggested diplomatically. "Business discussions can wait for a more appropriate time." After he departed, I remained at my desk, processing the interactions with both Vanessa and my father. Their reactions had been revealing, shock giving way not to anger, but to recalibration, as though they were scrambling to incorporate this new information into their understanding of both me and themselves. Tomorrow would bring the public revelation, as 200 guests, many from their professional and social circles, gathered in my flagship property to celebrate Vanessa's birthday. The carefully maintained family narrative about my capabilities and choices would be decisively rewritten in a single evening. As I gathered my things to leave for the day, Maya appeared with a small package that had been delivered for me. Opening it, I found a handwritten note from Elise Richardson, my first investor and now close friend, along with a vintage hotel key from the Plaza Hotel circa 1960. The note read simply, "For your collection. Some doors open through others' vision, but you've always held your own keys. Can't wait to see tomorrow unfold." I smiled, adding the key to the display case alongside artifacts from my own properties. Tomorrow would indeed be revealing, not just for my family, but for me as well. Success had always been the language the Caldwells understood most clearly. Now, finally, I was fluent enough to be heard. The morning of Vanessa's birthday celebration arrived with the kind of pristine spring weather that Chicago occasionally offers as compensation for its brutal winters. Clear skies, gentle breeze, and sunshine that bathed the city's architecture in golden light. From my apartment's windows, the lakefront sparkled invitingly, joggers and cyclists already claiming the paths that wound along the shoreline. I had deliberately scheduled minimal meetings for the day, allowing myself space to prepare both practically and emotionally for the evening ahead. Last night's revelations to Vanessa and my father had unfolded in private. Tonight would bring a more public reckoning as 200 guests witnessed the recalibration of the Caldwell family narrative. My phone chimed with a text from Elise. "Ready for tonight's performance? Remember, you've earned this moment. Don't let anyone rewrite your journey." Her message captured exactly what I needed to hear. Throughout the years of building Caldwell Collective, Elise had become more than an investor. She had become the mentor and champion I'd never had in my family. She understood both the business challenges and the personal stakes involved in creating something meaningful, despite others' doubts. After responding with thanks, I spent an hour reviewing the final arrangements for the evening. Jackson had coordinated everything flawlessly. Each detail reflected our company's commitment to creating memorable experiences. The custom floral installations, the carefully curated menu featuring locally sourced ingredients, the signature cocktails designed specifically for the occasion, all elements worked together to create something distinctive rather than merely expensive. By noon, I decided to visit the hotel, though guests wouldn't begin arriving until 7. The property hummed with purposeful activity as staff prepared for the evening, florists arranging dramatic installations in the grand entrance, bartenders polishing glassware to gleaming perfection, housekeeping ensuring each surface reflected our exacting standards. In the ballroom, the transformation was nearly complete. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across tables dressed in ivory linens, each centered with arrangements of pale roses and hydrangeas in vintage silver vessels. The stage where a renowned jazz ensemble would later perform was being prepared, by technicians adjusting lighting and sound. Along one wall, a custom photo installation displayed images from Vanessa's life, childhood moments, professional achievements, family milestones, arranged in an elegant timeline. "Ms. Caldwell," Jackson approached, tablet in hand. "Everything is proceeding according to schedule. The chef has prepared a tasting of tonight's menu if you'd like to review it." "Thank you, Jackson. Any word from the Thompsons since yesterday?" "Nothing." "Direct," he replied. "Their assistant confirmed final numbers this morning but made no other requests or adjustments. The hotel suite they reserved for changing before the event has been prepared to specifications." This silence from Vanessa was telling. Under normal circumstances, she would have been in constant contact, overseeing every detail personally. Her uncharacteristic absence suggested she was still processing yesterday's revelations and formulating her approach to the evening. After completing my review of preparations, I retreated to my office to address some pressing business matters before focusing fully on the night ahead. A potential investor for our Detroit property had questions about projected occupancy rates. Our design team needed approval for custom fixtures in our upcoming renovation. The hospitality industry publication wanted to confirm details for next month's feature on female entrepreneurs, transforming the luxury market. Each task reinforced what I had built over the past 6 years. Not just hotels, but relationships, systems, and a reputation for excellence that extended far beyond any individual. Property. This was the achievement my family had dismissed as impractical dreaming, the vision they had been unable to recognize when I had sought their support. At 4 o'clock, Maya appeared with a visitor, my mother Catherine, elegant as always in a tailored navy dress, her expression conveying caution mixed with curiosity. "The ballroom looks beautiful," she observed after Maya departed, moving to the window rather than sitting immediately. "Vanessa will be pleased with the setting." "Thank you," I replied, watching her carefully. "We pride ourselves on attention to detail." She turned from the window, studying me with an intensity I hadn't experienced from her in years. "Your father told me about your meeting yesterday. About all of this." Her gesture encompassed the office, the hotel, the enterprise I had built. "I assumed he would," I acknowledged. "It must have been surprising." "Surprising," she repeated, the word inadequate for the concept. "I've been trying to understand how we missed this, Olivia. How we failed to see the potential of what you were building." The admission that their perception had been flawed rather than my abilities was unexpected. Throughout my childhood, my mother had been the enforcer of family expectations, subtly reinforcing my father's proclamations about practical career paths and appropriate ambitions. "You saw what you expected to see," I replied without accusation. "When I chose hospitality over finance or law, you and Dad categorized that choice as a failure to launch rather than a deliberate career path. Every subsequent decision was viewed through that lens." She nodded slowly, finally taking a seat across from my desk. "When your father cut off financial support, I worried constantly. I imagined you struggling, perhaps eventually giving up and returning to Boston to accept a position at his firm. I never imagined this." Her gaze traveled over the awards displayed on my shelves, the industry recognition framed on the walls. "Would you have believed me if I'd told you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "If I'd called 3 years ago and said, I'd secured venture capital and was expanding my hotel concept, would you have accepted that as legitimate success?" The question seemed to trouble her. "I'd like to think I would have, but honestly, I don't know. We had such fixed ideas about what constituted meaningful achievement." Her candor was refreshing, perhaps the most authentic exchange we'd had in decades. "I stopped seeking your approval when I realized it would only come if I abandoned what mattered to me," I explained. That was ultimately liberating. It forced me to define success on my own terms. "And those terms have led to remarkable results," she observed, gesturing toward the Chicago skyline visible through my office windows. 4 properties, industry recognition, financial success, all achieved without our support or acknowledgement." The absence of defensiveness in her response suggested a genuine reckoning with past assumptions, something I hadn't anticipated from either of my parents. "Why are you here now, Mom?" I asked directly. "The event doesn't begin for several hours," she smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt, a gesture I recognized from childhood as indicating emotional discomfort. "I wanted to speak with you privately, before the public gathering. To acknowledge that I was wrong, that we were all wrong, about your capabilities and choices, and to ask if there might be a way forward from here." The admission cost her visibly. Catherine Caldwell rarely acknowledged error in any context. That she would do so now indicated the profound impact of discovering my success. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "Moving forward will require understanding, not just about what I've built professionally, but about the impact of being dismissed and underestimated by my family for decades. That doesn't disappear simply because my success is now undeniable." "Of course," she nodded. "Though I hope you might consider that our perspective, while clearly flawed, came from concern rather than malice." We wanted security and recognition for you. We simply failed to recognize that those things could come through channels we didn't understand or value. The distinction she offered between intentional cruelty and misguided concern merited consideration. Throughout my estrangement from my family, I had sometimes simplified their motivations, attributing to deliberate rejection what might have been limited vision combined with rigid expectations. "What about Vanessa?" I asked, addressing the more complex dynamic. Her dismissal of my choices went beyond parental concern for security. She actively undermined any recognition I received, consistently positioned my work as inferior, and seemed genuinely threatened by the possibility of my success in a field she considered beneath her. My mother's expression shifted, something like recognition crossing her features. "Your sister's relationship with you has always been complicated. Perhaps more than either of you fully understood." "Meaning what exactly?" She hesitated before continuing. "Vanessa structured her entire life around meeting expectations. Your father's, mine, our social circles. When you chose a different path, one that prioritized your passions over external validation, I think it challenged her in ways she couldn't articulate. She invested so much in following the prescribed route to success that your rejection of that path felt like a rejection of her choices as well." This insight aligned with conclusions I had reached while building my company, that Vanessa's antagonism stemmed partially from her own investment in a particular definition of success and achievement. Still, understanding her motivation didn't erase the impact of her behavior. That may explain her attitude, but it doesn't excuse years of deliberate undermining, I pointed out. Tonight's event will likely bring that tension to the surface. She's celebrating her 40th birthday in a hotel I built after years of telling everyone I would never amount to anything in hospitality. That's a significant recalibration of reality to process in 24 hours. "She's struggling," my mother acknowledged. "When she called last night after meeting with you, she cycled through disbelief, anger, and something that sounded almost like grief." Bradley tried to frame it positively. Family connections in a competitive industry, the prestige of your achievements reflecting well on the Caldwell name. But she wasn't ready to hear that perspective. This revelation about Vanessa's reaction intrigued me. Grief seemed an unexpected response to discovering a family member's success. What exactly was she mourning? The loss of her position as the family's sole achievement standard? The collapse of a narrative where her choices were vindicated by my supposed failures? "Tonight will be challenging for her," I said finally. "For all of us, but perhaps necessary for establishing a more honest foundation going forward." My mother nodded, rising to leave. "I should go. Your father and I are meeting Vanessa and Bradley for a drink before the event. A form of emotional preparation, I imagine." At the door, she paused. "I am proud of what you've built, Olivia. I wish I had recognized its value sooner." After she departed, I sat quietly, processing the conversation. Something fundamental had shifted in my relationship with my mother, a cautious recognition replacing years of dismissal. Whether that recognition would extend to Vanessa remained uncertain, but tonight would likely provide clarity one way or another. By 6 o'clock, I had retreated to the owner's suite on the top floor to prepare for the evening. I had selected my attire with deliberate care, a tailored black dress that projected elegant authority, accessorized with my grandmother's pearls and a custom bracelet Elise had given me when we secured funding for our second property. Professional, yet personal, understated rather than flashy. The visual representation of the business philosophy that had guided Caldwell Collective from its inception. As I applied finishing touches to my appearance, reports from Jackson confirmed that preparations were unfolding flawlessly. The jazz ensemble had arrived and completed a sound check. The chef had presented final versions of each course for approval. Servers had been briefed on the evening's flow, and VIP guests required special attention. "Vanessa and Bradley arrived 20 minutes ago," Jackson reported during our final check-in. They went directly to their suite with several garment bags. Mrs. Caldwell asked if you would be making an appearance before the general reception or waiting until the formal welcome. The question suggested my mother was attempting to prepare Vanessa for the evening's revelations, perhaps hoping to minimize public awkwardness. I'll join the general reception from the beginning, I decided. No need for separate family introductions beforehand. By 7, the first guests began arriving. From my vantage point on the mezzanine overlooking the grand entrance, I watched as Chicago's business elite, Vanessa's colleagues, and various family connections filed into the space, their appreciative murmurs confirming the impression created by our meticulously designed environment. Vanessa and Bradley made their entrance at 7:30, perfectly timed to arrive after most guests, but before the movement to the ballroom for dinner. She wore a champagne-colored gown that complemented her blonde hair, now arranged in an elegant updo with diamond clips catching the light. Bradley stood beside her in a custom tuxedo, his hand resting at the small of her back in a gesture that appeared both possessive and supportive. From my position, I could observe their entrance without being immediately visible to them. Vanessa's smile appeared practiced but strained, her gaze darting around the space as though searching for something or someone. My parents approached immediately, my father kissing her cheek while my mother embraced her with unusual warmth. The family tableau they created was picture-perfect, but lacked the easy authenticity of genuine connection. As they moved further into the reception, greeting friends and colleagues with practiced social grace, I descended the grand staircase to join the gathering. The moment was deliberately timed. My appearance as host and founder rather than hiding in the background or making a dramatic entrance. Conversations quieted briefly as I moved through the space, some guests clearly recognizing me while others exchanged confused glances, trying to place me within their understanding of the evening's context. I approached a group that included several prominent Chicago business figures, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. "Ms. Caldwell," greeted Marcus Reynolds, CEO of a major commercial real estate firm, "the property is spectacular. Your restoration work on the original architectural elements while incorporating modern luxury touches shows remarkable vision." "Thank you, Marcus. Honoring the building's history while creating a contemporary experience was our primary goal." I turned to include the others in the conversation. "Have you all had a chance to see the original stained glass in the mezzanine gallery? It was uncovered during renovation, hidden behind drywall from a 1970s remodel." As we discussed the property's architectural significance, I was acutely aware of Vanessa moving through the room several yards away, her gaze occasionally finding me before darting away again. The tension between us was palpable even at a distance, a current of unresolved emotion flowing beneath the elegant social veneer of the event. Eventually, the inevitable moment arrived. Vanessa's circuit of the room brought her directly into my path, Bradley at her side looking uncomfortable, but determined to maintain the appearance of social ease. "Olivia," Vanessa acknowledged, her voice pitched to carry no further than our immediate circle. "The hotel is lovely, very impressive." "Thank you," I replied simply. "We're honored to host your celebration." "Are we really doing this?" she asked. Her smile, never faltering through her eyes, conveyed a complex mix of emotions. "Pretending everything is normal while you— what? Make some grand announcement to everyone about your secret success?" "There's no grand announcement planned," I assured her. "A brief welcome as founder and CEO before dinner, as is customary at events in our properties. This evening is about celebrating your birthday, not my business achievements." Bradley placed a hand on Vanessa's arm, a subtle restraining gesture. "Everything looks wonderful, Olivia. The guests are clearly impressed with the venue." Vanessa's expression tightened momentarily before she regained her composure. "Of course they are. My sister has always had excellent taste, even if her career choices were unconventional." The final word carried a hint of her familiar condescension, though tempered with new uncertainty. Before the conversation could progress further, Jackson appeared at my side. "Ms. Caldwell, We're ready to begin moving guests to the ballroom whenever you'd like to signal the transition." "Thank you, Jackson." I turned back to Vanessa and Bradley. "Shall we proceed? As guests of honor, you should be first to enter." As the assembled company moved toward the ballroom, guided by staff positioned strategically throughout the space, I caught fragments of conversation that suggested news of my connection to the property was beginning to circulate. Curious glances were directed my way, and several guests who knew my parents approached with congratulatory comments that revealed their recent enlightenment. "I had no idea your daughter was behind Caldwell Collective," one of my father's longtime business associates commented, loud enough for nearby guests to overhear. "Thomas, you've been holding out on us. What a remarkable achievement for the family." My father's response was lost as I moved forward, but the comment illustrated exactly how the narrative was already being reshaped. My independent success being retrospectively folded into the family legacy, as though it had been supported and celebrated all along rather than dismissed and undermined. The ballroom, when revealed to the guests, elicited audible appreciation. The space glowed with warm light from the restored chandeliers, tables arranged to maximize both conversation and views of the stage where the jazz ensemble had begun playing softly. The photo installation along one wall drew immediate attention. Guests gathering to view images of Vanessa through the years, from childhood ballet recitals to her Harvard graduation, from her wedding to Bradley to recent professional accolades. As guests found their assigned tables, guided by staff with practiced efficiency, I moved to the small stage where a microphone had been arranged for the evening's official welcome. The moment had arrived for public acknowledgement of both Vanessa's celebration and my position within the context that surrounded it. The room quieted as I approached the microphone, expectation hanging in the air. At the center table, Vanessa sat rigidly beside Bradley, her expression carefully neutral, though her eyes never left my face. My parents flanked them, my father's posture suggesting discomfort, while my mother watched with unusual attentiveness. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady despite the emotional undercurrents flowing through the room. "On behalf of Caldwell Collective Hotels, I'm delighted to welcome you to our Gold Coast property for this special celebration." A murmur passed through sections of the crowd, where this confirmation of my role was apparently news. I continued, without acknowledging it. "Tonight we gather to celebrate Vanessa Thompson's 40th birthday, a milestone in a life characterized by remarkable achievement and dedication." I gestured toward the photo wall. "As you can see from the installation created specially for this evening, my sister has always approached life with determination and purpose." The word sister sent another ripple through the room. Connections being made, assumptions revised in real time. Vanessa's expression remained fixed in the social smile she had perfected over years of navigating professional events, though something flickered in her eyes at my acknowledgement of our relationship. Growing up as Vanessa's younger sister provided a masterclass in setting high standards and pursuing goals with unwavering focus, I continued. These qualities have served her well throughout her career at Matthews Financial and in establishing the Thompson Caldwell Foundation with her husband Bradley. The measured praise was genuine despite our complicated history. Vanessa's professional achievements were legitimate and significant, regardless of her treatment of me over the years. When Vanessa approached me about hosting her birthday celebration, it felt like a perfect opportunity to bring our paths together. Her celebrating a milestone birthday, me showcasing what we've built here at Caldwell Collective. I raised my glass in toast. "To Vanessa, may your 5th decade bring continued success, deeper wisdom, and perhaps new perspectives." As applause filled the room, I caught my sister's gaze directly. Something passed between us in that moment. Recognition, challenge, perhaps a question about what would follow this public acknowledgement of our connection and my success. Whatever equilibrium we might find would be determined by what happened next, as the carefully maintained family narrative continued its inevitable collapse under the weight of undeniable reality. I nodded to the service staff to begin the first course, stepping away from the microphone as the jazz ensemble resumed playing. The stage was set, the players positioned, the audience engaged. The real drama of the evening was just beginning to unfold. Dinner service proceeded with the precision and elegance that had become Caldwell Collective's hallmark. Each course emerged from the kitchen perfectly timed and exquisitely presented. Local spring vegetables arranged like a miniature garden, sustainably sourced seafood complemented by delicate sauces, artisanal cheese selections paired with honey from our rooftop beehives. The wine pairings, selected from small vineyards I had personally visited, enhanced each dish without overwhelming it. Throughout the meal, I circulated among tables, greeting guests and ensuring their experience met our exacting standards. The conversations I encountered revealed how quickly information had spread through the room. Many guests who had known me only as Vanessa's sister now regarded me with newfound interest, their questions probing for details about Caldwell Collective's founding and growth. "Quite the revelation," commented Elizabeth Warner, a prominent attorney who had attended Harvard with Vanessa. "Your sister never mentioned you were building a hotel empire. In fact, I recall her describing you as still finding your path at the last alumni gathering. Entrepreneurial journeys often look like wandering from the outside," I replied diplomatically, unwilling to publicly criticize Vanessa despite our history. At another table, a senior partner from Bradley's firm was more direct. Thompson mentioned, "Your family had concerns about your career choices years ago. Seems those concerns were misplaced, given what you've built here." I'd call this vindication in the most elegant form. These interactions confirmed what I had suspected, that Vanessa and Bradley had actively maintained a narrative about me that minimized my professional achievements and positioned my career choices as questionable at best. The revision of that narrative was happening in real time across the ballroom, reshaping not just perceptions of me, but potentially of Vanessa herself. From my vantage point near the service entrance, I observed my sister at the center table. Her social mask remained firmly in place, smiling at appropriate moments, engaging with guests who approached to offer birthday wishes, accepting compliments about the venue with practiced grace. Yet I recognized signs of strain visible only to someone who had grown up studying her expressions. The slight tension around her eyes, the occasional tightening of her grip on her wine glass, the moments when her gaze fixed on nothing particular, as though processing internal calculations. My father appeared similarly uncomfortable, his usual commanding presence diminished by the gradual realization that many of his business associates now viewed his daughter's success with admiration. He had never expressed himself. My mother, in contrast, seemed to be adapting more fluidly, her social skills allowing her to navigate the shifting dynamics with greater ease. As dessert service concluded, individual chocolate soufflés with house-made vanilla bean ice cream that emerged to appreciative murmurs from the guests. Jackson approached with an update on the evening's next phase. "The jazz ensemble will take a brief intermission," he informed me quietly. "Then, as requested by Mr. Thompson, they'll introduce him for a toast to Mrs. Thompson before the dancing begins." I nodded, unsurprised that Bradley would position himself centrally in the proceedings. Throughout their marriage, he had consistently framed himself as the architect of their shared success, with Vanessa as the beautiful and accomplished partner who complemented his achievements. The meal's conclusion brought a natural shift in the room's energy. Servers cleared tables efficiently while guests began to move about, some exploring the ballroom's architectural details, others gathering near the bar where craft cocktails were being prepared with theatrical flair. The ambient lighting adjusted, automatically to create a warmer, more intimate atmosphere appropriate for the evening's social phase. I was speaking with the hotel's head sommelier about a guest's wine question when Elise Richardson appeared at my side, elegant in a deep blue dress that complemented her silver hair. "Quite the production," she observed after the sommelier departed. Your sister seems to be maintaining her composure despite what must be a significant adjustment to her understanding of family dynamics. For now, I agreed, though the evening is still unfolding. Elise studied me with the penetrating gaze that had assessed countless business proposals and entrepreneurs throughout her career. You're remarkably calm for someone in the midst of such a loaded family reckoning. 6 years of building this company taught me to maintain equanimity during high-stakes situations, I replied. Tonight is ultimately just another event in my hotel, albeit with unusually personal dimensions. Elise's expression suggested. She wasn't entirely convinced by my practiced detachment. Well, the Forbes reporter is suitably impressed. That wasn't planned, was it? The revelation of your connection to the birthday girl? No, but it creates an interesting angle for her. Piece on women in hospitality leadership. The reporter's presence had been arranged weeks earlier as part of our ongoing media strategy, with Vanessa's high-profile birthday celebration serving as a backdrop to showcase our flagship property. The family drama now unfolding would certainly add an unexpected dimension to her coverage. Before our conversation could continue, the jazz ensemble returned to the stage. The lead singer approached the microphone, his rich voice filling the ballroom as he invited Bradley Thompson to join him for a special toast. Bradley moved to the stage with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding attention, his tailored tuxedo and carefully maintained physique projecting the image of success he had cultivated throughout his career. Taking the microphone, he surveyed the room with practiced charm. "Distinguished guests, dear friends and family," he began, his voice carrying the slight Boston accent that marked his privileged upbringing. "Thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate an extraordinary woman on her 40th birthday." What followed was a carefully constructed tribute to Vanessa. Her academic achievements, her professional success, her philanthropic vision, her role as mother to their 2 children, who were apparently at home with nannies, deemed too young for such an adult celebration. Bradley's delivery was polished, his anecdotes well chosen to highlight Vanessa's credentials while subtly emphasizing his role in their shared accomplishments. And of course, he continued, approaching the conclusion of his toast, special thanks to the remarkable venue hosting us tonight. The Caldwell Collective has created the perfect setting for this milestone celebration. His gaze found me in the crowd, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his features. Who could have imagined all those years ago that the family's concerns about Olivia's career path would prove so thoroughly unfounded? From uncertainty to undeniable success, a testament to the Caldwell resilience that Vanessa has always embodied in her own endeavors. The reference, positioning my success as somehow connected to Vanessa's example rather than achieved despite her active undermining, was so artfully constructed that many guests likely missed its subtle reframing. But the intent was clear to me. Bradley was attempting to incorporate my achievement retroactively into the family narrative, suggesting support where there had been only dismissal. As applause followed his toast, I watched Vanessa rise to join her husband on stage, accepting the microphone with a smile that appeared genuine to most observers, but which I recognized contained elements of strain. The birthday girl was expected to respond to her husband's tribute, to offer gracious thanks to assembled guests, to maintain the carefully curated image of success and satisfaction that had defined her public persona for decades. "Thank you all for sharing this special evening," she began, her voice steady despite what must have been considerable emotional turbulence, and especially to Bradley for his generous words and for orchestrating this beautiful celebration. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room before continuing. Milestone birthdays naturally prompt reflection on achievements, on choices, on the paths that have brought us to the present moment. Standing here tonight, I find myself reflecting on journeys of many kinds. Something in her tone shifted slightly, a hint of unscripted emotion entering her carefully modulated voice. When Bradley suggested celebrating my birthday in Chicago, I reached out to my sister Olivia for assistance in securing a suitable venue. I did so with certain assumptions about her circumstances and capabilities. Assumptions that, as you've all gathered by now, proved startlingly incorrect. The room quieted, guests sensing the turn toward something more revealing than standard birthday gratitude. At the table nearest the stage, my parents exchanged glances, my father shifting uncomfortably, while my mother maintained her composed expression. For those who haven't connected the dots, Vanessa continued, my sister Olivia isn't simply an employee here. She is the founder and CEO of Caldwell Collective Hotels, this flagship property and 3 others in Chicago, with expansion underway in Detroit. She has, without family support or connections, built a hospitality company currently valued at approximately $50 million. The blunt acknowledgement of my success, delivered without Bradley's attempt to fold it into existing family mythology, surprised me. Equally surprising was her explicit mention of without family support, a clear reference to the withdrawal of assistance that had followed my refusal to abandon my hospitality career. This revelation has been illuminating, Vanessa admitted, something almost vulnerable entering her expression. Throughout our lives, our family operated according to certain definitions of success and achievement. My path aligned with those definitions, Olivia's did not. The results speak for themselves. She gestured toward the soaring space of the ballroom, its perfectly executed blend of historic architecture and contemporary design. What you experienced tonight, the impeccable service, the thoughtful details, the seamless integration of luxury and authenticity, represents exactly what Olivia described years ago when presenting her business concept to our father. A concept he dismissed as impractical and unworthy of investment. My father's expression tightened visibly at this public reference to his rejection. My mother placed a hand on his arm, a restraining gesture that suggested she recognized the danger in what was unfolding. I find myself wondering what else we dismissed, Vanessa continued, her voice taking on a quality I had rarely heard from her, something approaching genuine introspection. What other possibilities we failed to recognize because they didn't conform to our narrow understanding of value. The room had grown remarkably still, the assembled guests sensing they were witnessing something beyond typical birthday reflections. Many watched with the careful attention of people who recognized significant social recalibration unfolding before them. But tonight isn't meant for family reckoning, Vanessa said, attempting to steer back toward safer territory. It's a celebration of 4 decades of life, with gratitude for all who have shared the journey. She raised her champagne glass. To friends old and new, to lessons still being learned, and to definitions of success that perhaps deserve reconsideration. The toast drew appreciative applause, though mixed with murmurs that suggested guests were processing the unexpected frankness of her remarks. As Vanessa moved to return the microphone to the bandleader, Bradley stepped forward, clearly intending to redirect the proceedings toward more festive territory. What happened next occurred with such unexpected swiftness that many guests would later describe it differently, each perspective capturing fragments of a moment when carefully maintained social facades collapsed entirely. As Bradley reached for the microphone, Vanessa turned toward him with an expression suddenly stripped of its practiced polish. "Don't," she said, the single word audible through the microphone she still held. "I'm not finished." The sharpness in her tone, so contrary to her public persona, created an immediate ripple through the room. Bradley's hand froze mid-gesture, his expression conveying both confusion and the beginnings of alarm. "Vanessa," he said quietly, though not quietly enough to prevent those nearest the stage from hearing, "let's move to the dancing portion of the evening. This isn't the appropriate forum for whatever this is becoming." "Appropriate," she repeated, the word carrying unexpected weight. That's always been the primary concern, hasn't it? Maintaining appropriate appearances regardless of underlying realities. She turned back to the assembled guests, something having visibly shifted in her demeanor. the perfect social mask cracking to reveal emotions I had rarely witnessed in my controlled, achievement-oriented sister. I've spent decades constructing the narrative of the perfect Caldwell daughter, she said, her voice steady despite the raw quality that had entered it. Harvard undergraduate, Wharton MBA, fast-tracked finance career, strategic marriage, children precisely timed for optimal career impact, philanthropy carefully selected for maximum social leverage. Every choice calculated, every achievement measured against family expectations. Bradley had moved closer, his expression now openly concerned. Vanessa, the guests are here to celebrate your birthday, not to witness the truth, she interrupted, stepping slightly away from him. The carefully maintained fiction that I have embodied the ideal of success while my sister pursued impractical dreams? That fiction collapsed yesterday when I discovered those impractical dreams had produced this. Her gesture encompassed the elegant ballroom. My parents had risen from their seats, my father moving with uncharacteristic urgency toward the stage, while my mother followed with a composed expression that nonetheless conveyed alarm. The assembled guests watched with the collective fascination of people witnessing an unexpected departure from social script. Do you know what I felt when I learned my sister had built all this without family support? Vanessa continued, her gaze finding me in the crowd. Not pride, not happiness for her achievement. My first emotion was panic. Pure, unfiltered panic. That the narrative I've invested everything in maintaining was suddenly, irrevocably undermined. The raw honesty of this admission stunned me. Throughout our lives, Vanessa had maintained such careful control over her public presentation that this unguarded revelation of internal vulnerability seemed almost like watching a stranger emerge from behind a familiar facade. For years, I've measured my choices as valid and worthy because they aligned with family expectations while Olivia's didn't, she continued, seeming almost unaware of the stunned audience now. Her rejection of finance or law for hospitality confirmed my decision to follow the prescribed path. Her apparent financial struggles after being cut off validated my choice to compromise personal interests for security and status. Each perceived failure on her part reinforced the narrative that I had chosen correctly. My father had reached the edge of the stage, his expression a complex blend of anger and alarm. "Vanessa, that's enough," he said, his voice carrying the authority that had silenced family discussions throughout my childhood. "You're upset and saying things you don't mean. Let's continue this conversation privately." For perhaps the first time in her adult life, Vanessa openly defied our father. "No," she said simply, the single syllable carrying decades of unspoken tension. "I've maintained privacy and appropriate appearances my entire life at significant personal cost. Tonight, that ends." She turned back to the assembled guests, many of whom appeared torn between discomfort at witnessing what was clearly a private family matter and fascination with the unexpected drama unfolding before them. "The truth is, I've been desperately unhappy for years," Vanessa stated with startling clarity. "My career brings status but minimal fulfillment. My marriage provides security but little joy. The philanthropic work that generates such positive press was initially Bradley's idea, calculated for optimal tax advantages and social positioning. Bradley's expression had transformed from concern to alarm, tinged with anger. "You're overtired and emotional," he said, the patronizing tone audible to those nearest the stage. "Let's get you somewhere quiet to rest." His dismissive characterization of her emotional state, reducing genuine distress to feminine hysteria, seemed to ignite something in Vanessa. The controlled, achievement-oriented sister I had known throughout my life suddenly appeared genuinely furious. "I am not overtired," she stated, each word precisely articulated. "I am finally saying what I have suppressed for decades. My sisters. Success without family support or connections has forced me to confront the possibility that I have spent my entire adult life miserable but appropriate, rather than pursuing genuine fulfillment. At this point, I felt compelled to intervene, moving through the stunned crowd toward the stage. This public unraveling couldn't possibly lead anywhere productive, regardless of how validating certain aspects might feel after years of dismissal. "Vanessa," I said as I reached the steps to the stage, "let's continue this conversation somewhere private. Tonight is still your celebration." Her gaze, when it found mine, contained emotions I had rarely witnessed in my controlled, achievement-oriented sister. Genuine pain mixed with something that looked almost like pleading. "Do you know what I told myself all these years?" she asked. Addressing me directly through the microphone ensured her words reached the entire room. "That your choices were selfish and impractical. That pursuing your passion rather than reliable success showed immaturity and poor judgment. That cutting you off financially was necessary tough love rather than punishment for rejecting family expectations." The public acknowledgement of these perspectives, which I had inferred but never heard directly articulated, struck with unexpected force. Despite the inappropriate forum, a part of me recognized the significance of Vanessa finally admitting the underlying narrative that had shaped our relationship for decades. "When I saw what you've built," she continued, her voice softening slightly, "it forced me to confront the possibility that the family narrative about success and achievement, the narrative I've structured my entire life around, might be fundamentally flawed. That the sister we dismissed as impractical might actually have understood something essential about authentic fulfillment that the rest of us missed entirely." This moment of vulnerable recognition, public and unguarded in ways Vanessa had never been, created a strange stillness in the room. The assembled guests seemed to collectively hold their breath, witnessing something raw and genuine breaking through the polished surface of social performance. The fragile moment shattered when Bradley stepped forward, taking Vanessa's arm with what appeared to be gentle concern but which I recognized contained elements of control. "I think we need to wrap up the speeches portion of the evening," he announced with forced joviality. "My wife is clearly overwhelmed by birthday emotions and could use some fresh air. Please enjoy the dancing and desserts while we take a brief moment." His attempt to reframe Vanessa's emotional breakthrough as mere birthday sentimentality struck me as both dismissive and manipulative, reducing her genuine expression to something trivial and gender stereotyped. To my surprise, Vanessa appeared to recognize this as well. "Let go of my arm, Bradley," she said, her voice quiet, but carrying a clarity that suggested newfound resolve. "I'm not overwhelmed by birthday emotions. I'm finally acknowledging truths I've suppressed for years, beginning with the fact that our marriage has been more business arrangement than a partnership from the start." The bluntness of this statement in such a public forum clearly shocked Bradley, his hand dropping from her arm as though burned. My father moved closer, his expression suggesting he was calculating how to contain the situation with minimal social damage. "Vanessa, this isn't appropriate," he began. The familiar refrain of my childhood, appropriateness prioritized over authenticity, appearances over emotional truth. It was this comment, the prioritization of social propriety over genuine emotional expression, that seemed to finally break something fundamental in Vanessa's carefully maintained composure. She turned toward our father, decades of suppressed emotion suddenly visible in her expression. "Appropriate," she repeated, the word carrying unmistakable bitterness. "Your obsession with appropriateness has cost this family any chance at genuine connection. It pushed Olivia away entirely and left me trapped in a life that looks perfect, but feels empty." She turned back toward me, something almost desperate entering her expression. "When you showed me your hotel designs years ago, I dismissed them just like Dad did. But do you know what I never told you? I was jealous, intensely, painfully jealous that you had the courage to pursue something that genuinely excited you while I followed the approved path without question." This admission, that beneath the dismissal had been envy rather than concern, struck me with unexpected force. Throughout our lives, I had interpreted Vanessa's attitude as straightforward condescension, never considering that more complex emotions might underlie her consistent undermining of my choices. Before I could process this revelation fully, Bradley stepped forward again, his expression now openly angry beneath the thin veneer of social concern. "This has gone far enough," he stated firmly. "You're embarrassing yourself and creating an uncomfortable situation for our guests. Let's get you somewhere quiet before you say something truly regrettable." His patronizing tone, treating Vanessa's emotional breakthrough as irrational behavior requiring male management, seemed to trigger something fundamental in my normally controlled sister. She turned toward him, years of suppressed frustration suddenly finding voice. "Something regrettable?" she repeated, her voice rising slightly, like acknowledging that our marriage has been a mutually beneficial business arrangement rather than a loving partnership. "That your affairs with at least 3 different women over the past 5 years have been an open secret in certain circles? That the children you're so proud of presenting as evidence of our perfect family see more of their nannies than either of their parents?" The gasps from nearby guests confirmed that this level of raw honesty had transcended conventional social boundaries entirely. Bradley's expression transformed from controlled concern to genuine alarm mingled with anger. "You're having some kind of breakdown," he stated definitively, as though diagnosing a medical condition rather than witnessing emotional authenticity. "I'm taking you upstairs now." He reached for her arm again, his grip visibly firmer this time. The gesture, controlling rather than supportive, seemed to catalyze something in me. I stepped onto the stage fully, moving to position myself between them. "I think Vanessa has been clear about wanting space," I said quietly, but firmly. "This is my hotel, Bradley. I suggest you respect her wishes." The standoff that followed, Bradley's confident authority suddenly challenged, his careful public image threatened by both Vanessa's revelations and my intervention, hung suspended in a moment of tense silence. Then, with startling abruptness, he shifted tactics entirely. "Your hotel," he said, a cruel smile forming. "Yes, the great success story we're all meant to applaud. Shall we discuss how you finance this empire? The trust fund accessed through legal loopholes after being cut off? The family connections leveraged despite claims of independence?" The accusations, entirely fabricated but delivered with confident authority, were clearly designed to undermine my achievement in the eyes of assembled guests. It was a calculated attempt to reframe my success as ultimately dependent on family resources rather than earned through independent effort. "You know that's not true," I replied evenly. "Caldwell Collective was built with venture capital and subsequent reinvestment of profits. No family money was involved at any stage." "Such righteousness," he laughed dismissively. "The homeless Caldwell daughter reinventing herself as the self-made entrepreneur. A compelling narrative, but hardly the complete picture." The word homeless landed with deliberate weight, a calculated attempt to diminish my achievement by suggesting I had experienced genuine financial distress rather than strategic limitation. Before I could respond, Vanessa stepped forward, her expression reflecting genuine outrage for perhaps the first time in our adult relationship. "That's enough, Bradley," she stated firmly. "Olivia built this company without a penny from our family. In fact, she succeeded despite active discouragement and dismissal from all of us. That's the reality your ego can't seem to process." Her defense, unexpected after years of active undermining, created a moment of genuine connection between us, sisters united against external attack rather than positioned against each other by family dynamics. Bradley seemed to recognize this shift, his expression calculating as he assessed the changing allegiances before him. "How touching," he observed with deliberate cruelty. The Caldwell sisters finally united, the homeless dreamer and the trophy wife having mutual breakdowns at what was supposed to be a civilized celebration. The deliberate provocation, homeless, repeated for maximum impact, coupled with the dismissive characterization of Vanessa as merely decorative, crossed a fundamental line. My sister, who had maintained perfect composure throughout decades of public scrutiny, responded with unprecedented directness. "Security," she called clearly, addressing the hotel staff positioned discreetly around the perimeter of the ballroom. "I believe Mr. Thompson needs to be escorted from the premises." The request, issued with the natural authority Vanessa had cultivated throughout her professional life, prompted immediate response. Two security team members moved forward smoothly, their expressions professional but determined as they approached Bradley. "This is absurd," he protested, looking toward my father for support. "Thomas, surely you're not going to allow this melodrama to continue?" My father, who had witnessed the entire exchange with increasing discomfort, seemed momentarily frozen between conflicting imperatives, maintaining social appearances versus supporting his daughters in a moment of crisis. For perhaps the first time in my memory, he chose the latter. "I think it would be best if you stepped outside to collect yourself." "Bradley," he said quietly, "this evening has clearly taken an unexpected turn for everyone involved." The security team members had reached Bradley's side, their presence not yet physically restraining, but clearly communicating the expectation of compliance. The assembled guests watched in stunned silence as the carefully orchestrated birthday celebration continued its transformation into something unprecedented, raw, authentic, and completely unscripted. As Bradley was escorted toward the exit, his expression promising future consequences for this public humiliation, Vanessa turned toward the shocked guests. For a moment, she seemed at a loss for words. The perfectly composed social persona she had maintained throughout her adult life finally cracked beyond repair. Then, with surprising steadiness, she spoke. "I'm afraid the birthday celebration has evolved in unexpected ways," she acknowledged, a hint of genuine humor entering her voice for perhaps the first time that evening. "Those who wish to stay are welcome to enjoy the exceptional hospitality of Caldwell Collective. Those who feel uncomfortable with authentic human emotion are welcome to depart with no hard feelings." The statement, refreshingly direct after decades of careful social performance, seemed to release some of the tension that had built in the room. A few guests moved discreetly toward the exit, but most remained, their expressions suggesting they recognized they were witnessing something significant beyond mere social drama. As the jazz ensemble began playing again, a thoughtful choice by the band leader who had assessed the room's need for gentle transition, Vanessa turned toward me, something vulnerable and genuine in her expression. "I'm sorry," she said simply, the words quiet enough that only I could hear them. "For years of dismissal, for not seeing what you were building, for prioritizing family mythology over truth." The apology, unexpected and clearly sincere, created a moment of connection unlike anything we had shared since early childhood. Before I could respond, she continued, her voice catching slightly. "I'm jealous of your courage," she admitted, the raw honesty of the statement striking in its contrast to her usual careful presentation. "Not just of your success, but of your willingness to pursue what matters to you regardless of external validation. I've never known that kind of freedom." The revelation of her envy, that beneath years of apparent condescension had been something closer to painful longing, shifted my understanding of our relationship in fundamental ways. The sister I had perceived as dismissive had perhaps been trapped in her own form of limitation, unable to imagine alternatives to the narrowly defined success she had pursued with such determined focus. As we stood together on the stage, the perfect Caldwell daughter and the rebellious one, roles suddenly less clear than they had seemed for decades. Something new seemed possible between us. Not instant repair of years of complicated dynamics, but perhaps the beginning of more authentic connection based on truth rather than carefully maintained fiction. "It's not too late," I said quietly, the words offered not as platitude but as genuine possibility. "To redefine your choices, to pursue what actually matters to you." Vanessa's smile contained both sadness and something that might have been hope. "I wouldn't even know where to begin," she admitted. I've been performing the role of the successful Vanessa Caldwell Thompson for so long, I'm not sure what exists beneath the performance. Perhaps that's the first step, I suggested. Not knowing. Being willing to explore without predetermined outcomes. Around us, the event had begun restructuring itself. Guests returning to tables or moving toward the dance floor. Staff adapting to the changed atmosphere with professional flexibility. My parents engaged in quiet conversation with several longtime friends who appeared to be offering support rather than judgment. The birthday celebration would continue, transformed by unexpected authenticity, but not destroyed by it. What had been revealed about family dynamics, about the costs of prioritizing appearance over truth, about the possibility of connection beyond carefully maintained facades, couldn't be returned to the realm of unspoken understanding. Whatever followed for our family and especially for Vanessa and me would be built on a fundamentally different foundation than what had come before. As the evening continued its evolution from carefully orchestrated performance to something more authentic, I recognized that tonight represented not just the public acknowledgement of my professional achievement, but perhaps the beginning of something more significant. The possibility of genuine relationship beyond the limiting narratives that had shaped our family for decades. The remainder of Vanessa's birthday celebration unfolded with a quality rarely experienced in high society gatherings, authentic human connection replacing carefully curated performance. After Bradley's departure, escorted discreetly but firmly by security, something shifted in the atmosphere. The assembled guests, initially shocked by the public confrontation, gradually relaxed into a more genuine form of celebration. The jazz ensemble, sensing the change dynamic, adjusted their selections to support the evolving mood, moving from formal background music to more engaging rhythms that drew people naturally to the dance floor. Conversations around tables seemed to deepen, business associates and social acquaintances abandoning perfectly polished small talk for more meaningful exchanges. My parents, after briefly disappearing to collect themselves, returned to the ballroom with visible determination to navigate the unexpected turn of events with dignity. My mother slipped seamlessly into her social role, moving among guests with practiced grace while addressing the situation with refreshing directness. Yes, quite the unexpected family revelation, I overheard her telling a longtime family friend. It appears we underestimated Olivia's vision quite significantly. The hospitality empire she's built is remarkable, all without family resources or connections. Sometimes children forge paths we could never have imagined for them. My father, less adept at social adaptation, remained somewhat subdued but made visible efforts to engage with the changed circumstances. I observed him speaking with several business associates near the bar, actually listening as they offered perspectives on the boutique hotel market and Caldwell Collective's innovative approach to luxury hospitality. Throughout these interactions, Vanessa remained central to the celebration, despite the dramatic shift from her original vision of the perfect 40th birthday gala. After our moment of connection on stage, she had moved among her guests with a quality I had rarely witnessed in her, a genuine presence that replaced her usual perfect social performance. It's liberating, she confided when we found a quiet moment together near the dessert display. Speaking truth after decades of careful curation, I feel simultaneously terrified and more alive than I have in years. Truth has that effect, I acknowledged, though perhaps a slightly more private venue might have been ideal for some of tonight's revelations. She laughed, a genuine sound, rather than the carefully modulated social laugh she had perfected over years of professional networking. Apparently, I've been suppressing more than I realized. Once the dam broke, she gestured expansively at the ballroom where her personal drama had unfolded before 200 guests. What happens now? I asked, the question encompassing far more than the remainder of the evening. With Bradley, with your career, with everything. She considered this with unusual thoughtfulness, absently twisting the substantial diamond on. her left hand. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "That's both terrifying and oddly exciting. For the first time in decades, I don't have a carefully mapped 5-year plan. I only know I can't continue performing a role that's slowly suffocating me." Before our conversation could deepen further, Jackson appeared with a discreet reminder that the cake presentation was scheduled for the next interval in the music. Vanessa nodded, then turned back to me with unexpected vulnerability. "Will you join me for the cake cutting? Not as the hotel owner, but as my sister? It seems appropriate given tonight's revelations that we acknowledge our actual relationship, rather than the fiction we've maintained." The request, simple yet profound in its acknowledgement of genuine connection rather than performed roles, created an unexpected tightness in my throat. "Of course," I managed, the two words carrying more emotional weight than elaborate speeches might have conveyed. As the music paused and lights adjusted to highlight the cake being wheeled into the center of the ballroom, Vanessa and I stood, together while the assembled guests gathered around. The cake itself reflected Caldwell Collective's aesthetic, elegant yet not ostentatious, with hand-painted sugar flowers cascading down 3 perfect tiers. "Before we continue with tradition," Vanessa addressed the gathered crowd, her voice steady despite the evening's emotional turbulence, "I want to acknowledge the extraordinary woman beside me, my sister Olivia, who created not just this beautiful venue, but a hospitality company built on authentic vision rather than conventional expectations." The public acknowledgement, freely offered rather than extracted through confrontation, represented a fundamental shift in our relationship. As applause filled the room, Vanessa continued with surprising candor. "Tonight has obviously contained some unexpected elements," she acknowledged with a self-deprecating smile that felt far more genuine than her usual perfect social expression. "What began as a conventional celebration has evolved into something more authentic, perhaps the best possible gift on a milestone birthday." She turned toward me, something vulnerable yet determined in her expression. "Thank you, Olivia, not just for hosting tonight's event, but for demonstrating through your life and work that success can be defined by passion and vision rather than external expectations. It's a lesson I'm finally ready to learn." The public acknowledgement of my achievement, without qualification or attempt to diminish its significance, created a moment of connection unlike anything we had shared in our adult lives. As we cut the cake together, flashbulbs capturing the moment for social media and the Forbes journalist observing with undisguised interest, I recognized that something fundamental had shifted between us. Not instant repair of decades of complicated dynamics, but the beginning of genuine relationships, built on truth rather than carefully maintained fiction. The sisters who had been positioned as success and failure, practical achiever and impractical dreamer, were finally emerging as complex individuals with different strengths, different journeys, and the possibility of meaningful connection beyond limiting narratives. As the evening progressed toward its conclusion, guests gradually departed with expressions suggesting they had experienced something beyond typical social entertainment. Many approached me directly, business cards extended with genuine interest in Caldwell Collective's approach to hospitality. Others sought out Vanessa, their interactions carrying a quality of authentic connection rather than mere social obligation. Near midnight. As the jazz ensemble played their final set and servers circulated with departure refreshments, my parents approached where Vanessa and I stood near the photo installation that chronicled her life journey. "Your father and I will be departing shortly," my mother announced, her composure remarkably intact despite the evening's dramatic developments. "We're staying through Monday if you both might be available for brunch tomorrow. There are family matters that would benefit from further discussion." The invitation, acknowledging the need for genuine conversation rather than performed harmony, suggested my mother at least was attempting to adapt to new realities rather than retreating into familiar patterns. "I'd like that," I responded, surprising myself with the genuine sentiment behind the words. Vanessa nodded her agreement, though a flicker of apprehension crossed her features at the prospect of continuing tonight's emotional revelations in more intimate surroundings. After they departed, Vanessa turned to me with unexpected vulnerability. "I'm not sure I'm ready for a full family reckoning over eggs, Benedict," she admitted. "Tonight's truth-telling has left me feeling rather raw." "We could meet them at Caldwell Collective West Loop instead of here," I suggested. "The rooftop garden provides privacy with enough public presence to discourage excessive emotional processing. Plus, the shakshuka is exceptional. Always the hospitality expert," she smiled, the expression containing genuine warmth rather than her usual condescension. Then her expression grew serious again. "Where am I staying tonight? I obviously can't return to the suite I was sharing with Bradley." The question highlighted the practical implications of her public break with carefully constructed appearances. Her emotional liberation from performing the perfect wife role had immediate logistical consequences. "I have a penthouse apartment here in the hotel," I offered. "Originally designed as an owner's residence, though I maintain my own place elsewhere in the city. It's fully furnished and completely private. You're welcome to stay as long as needed while you navigate next steps." "Thank you," she said simply, the two words carrying genuine gratitude rather than social obligation. Then she laughed softly, shaking her head at some private realization. "The irony isn't lost on me, you know. All these years dismissing your career choices as impractical, and now I'm accepting shelter from the empire you built." "Life rarely follows the narratives we construct," I observed, "which is probably for the best." As the final guests departed and staff began the meticulous process of returning the ballroom to its usual condition, Vanessa and I moved toward the private elevator that would take us to the upper floors. The evening's events, so different from the carefully orchestrated celebration she had envisioned, seemed to have drained her usual energetic efficiency. She leaned against the elevator wall, 40 years suddenly visible in the fine lines around her eyes. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked quietly as we ascended. "When the social media posts start circulating? When Bradley begins damage control? When our carefully constructed family image is irreparably altered?" The question acknowledged the practical consequences of tonight's emotional breakthrough, the professional implications, the social complexities, the unavoidable public dimension of what had begun as private family dynamics. "We adapt," I replied simply. "Something I've learned while building this company is that adaptation often leads to more authentic outcomes than rigid adherence to original plans." The penthouse apartment occupied the entire top floor of the hotel's east wing, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Chicago's skyline now glittering against the night sky. Designed with the same philosophy that guided our guest accommodations, the space balanced luxury with genuine comfort. Museum-quality art alongside inviting seating areas, custom architectural elements complemented by thoughtfully selected objects that invited touch and interaction. "This is beautiful," Vanessa acknowledged, moving slowly through the space as though absorbing its details might provide temporary distraction from the emotional weight of the evening. "The balance of aesthetics and comfort. It's exactly what you described in that business plan Dad dismissed all those years ago?" The observation, recognizing that I had successfully executed precisely the vision I had articulated before being cut off financially, suggested Vanessa had been paying more attention than her dismissive attitude had indicated. "You remember the details of my business plan?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "I read it," she admitted, running her fingers along the custom walnut dining table, after Dad rejected it. I wanted to understand what had prompted such a definitive reaction from him. It was actually compelling. The market analysis, the differentiation strategy, the financial projections, all meticulously researched and presented. His dismissal wasn't about the plan's quality, but about his fixed ideas regarding appropriate Caldwell careers. This revelation, that she had engaged seriously with my business concept despite publicly supporting our father's rejection, suggested complex layers beneath her apparent alignment with family expectations. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, the question encompassing years of her active undermining rather than support. She moved to the windows, gazing out at the city lights before answering. "Because acknowledging the merit in your vision would require questioning the choices I had made. Following the prescribed path, prioritizing security over passion, measuring success by external validation rather than personal fulfillment. It was easier to dismiss your choices than to examine my own." The honesty of this admission, devoid of the defensiveness that had characterized most of our adult interactions, created space for genuine understanding rather than continued resentment. "I envied your courage," she continued, still facing the window rather than meeting my gaze directly. "Even while criticizing your choices, I envied your willingness to pursue what actually mattered to you, regardless of family approval. I've never known that kind of freedom." It didn't feel like courage at the time, I admitted, joining her at the window. It felt like survival. Pursuing anything else would have meant slowly suffocating parts of myself that I couldn't bear to lose. Even for financial security or family approval. We stood in companionable silence, the city lights creating a backdrop for this unexpected moment of connection. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice carried a quality of genuine curiosity I had rarely heard from her. "What was it like? Those first years after Dad cut you off? Not the sanitized version, but the reality." The question invited honesty rather than performance, a significant shift from our usual interactions where vulnerability had been treated as weakness rather than connection point. "Terrifying," I acknowledged. "Exhilarating. Exhausting. The studio apartment with milk crate furniture. Selling designer clothes to cover rent. Working 18-hour days between my hotel job and consulting gigs. Wondering constantly if I was delusional to believe I could actually build what I envisioned. Yet you persisted," she observed, "without family support or connection, without the safety net that had always defined our existence. I discovered resources within myself I hadn't known existed," I explained. "Resilience, creativity under siege, constraint, willingness to ask for help from unexpected sources, the ability to maintain vision through temporary setbacks." Vanessa turned from the window, her expression thoughtful. "I've never been tested that way. Every path was smoothed before I encountered it. The right schools, the right connections, the right opportunities all arranged through family influence. I've achieved measurable success without ever discovering what I might be capable of when truly challenged." The insight, that privilege had potentially limited her self-knowledge rather than simply enhancing her opportunities, suggested deeper reflection than I had witnessed from her previously. "It's not too late," I offered, "to discover those capacities within yourself." She laughed softly, though without bitterness. "At 40, with a Harvard MBA and 2 decades in finance, that seems rather late for meaningful reinvention." "I started Caldwell Collective at 33, I reminded her. "After years in a different direction. The timeline matters less than the willingness to begin." She considered this, absently twisting her wedding ring, the physical symbol of choices now being questioned. "Perhaps," she acknowledged, "though reinvention seems particularly challenging when you're not entirely sure what you might want beyond escape from current circumstances." "That's often the first stage," I suggested, "knowing what doesn't work before discovering what does. Clarity sometimes emerges from the process rather than preceding it." Morning light was beginning to soften the eastern horizon, the night's emotional revelations having extended conversation far beyond either of us had anticipated. Vanessa moved toward the guest bedroom, pausing at the threshold. "Thank you," she said simply, "not just for tonight's shelter, but for showing me a possibility I couldn't imagine for myself, that success might be defined by authentic vision rather than external validation." She hesitated before adding, "I'd like to understand more about what you've built. Not from Bradley's perspective of potential business advantage, but from yours." the vision that guided these choices. The request for genuine understanding rather than strategic assessment represented perhaps the most significant shift in our relationship. For the first time in our adult lives, Vanessa was approaching me as someone with valuable perspective, rather than someone requiring guidance or correction. "I'd like that," I replied, the simple affirmation acknowledging possibilities beyond our historical patterns. As she disappeared into the guest room, I remained by the windows, watching dawn gradually illuminate the city I had chosen as home. The events of the past 24 hours, from Vanessa's shocked discovery of my role in Caldwell Collective to tonight's public confrontation and emotional breakthrough, had fundamentally altered family dynamics maintained for decades. Whatever emerged from this disruption wouldn't be simple restoration of previously damaged connections. The truth once spoken couldn't be reclaimed. Realities once acknowledged couldn't be conveniently forgotten. What might develop instead was something potentially more valuable: relationships based on authentic understanding rather than performed roles. Connections grounded in genuine recognition rather than strategic positioning. The sister who had told everyone I was homeless was now sleeping in the penthouse of my hotel. The father who had dismissed my business concept was beginning to acknowledge its successful execution. The family that had defined achievement in narrow, prescribed terms was being forced to reconsider possibilities beyond traditional metrics. Not neat resolution, but messy, ongoing recalibration. Not perfect harmony, but the potential for more genuine connection. Not the family narrative I had imagined during those difficult early years of building my company, but perhaps something ultimately more meaningful than either resentment or vindication could provide. As sunlight gradually illuminated the Chicago skyline, I recognized that my success had created the opportunity for something beyond professional validation, the possibility of family transformation based on truth rather than carefully maintained fiction. Whether that opportunity would fulfill its potential remained uncertain, but its existence represented a form of achievement beyond financial metrics or industry recognition. The hotel I had built against all expectations had become the setting for personal breakthroughs as significant as professional ones. The space designed to provide authentic luxury experiences for guests had created the environment for authentic emotional experiences within my own family. The vision dismissed as impractical dreaming had manifested not just economic value, but transformative potential in relationships, long defined by limitation rather than possibility. Whatever happened next, with Vanessa's marriage, with family relationships, with the public dimension of tonight's revelations, would unfold in context fundamentally altered by truth finally acknowledged. The sister who had called me homeless had found shelter not just in my hotel, but perhaps in a more authentic understanding of both herself and me. The security that arrived had escorted away not just Bradley, but perhaps the limitations of performing, roles that had constrained genuine connection for decades. Dawn had fully broken over Chicago, not ending, but beginning a journey whose destination remained unknown, but whose direction finally acknowledged truth rather than comfortable fiction. In that acknowledgement lay possibilities beyond vindication or resentment. The potential for connections based on who we actually were, rather than who we had been told to be. Not perfect resolution, but something potentially more valuable, the freedom of authentic recognition after years of careful performance. The homeless dreamer had built a home not just for hotel guests, but potentially for more genuine family connection than years of recorded success had ever provided. Whatever uncertainty the future held, that achievement transcended any industry award or financial validation that professional success alone could offer. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.